Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
We would be India's largest artisanal bakery brand. There is no good bakery brand in India. So if you look at distribution and product quality, perceived product quality on this, you'll have your, let's say, a local like a Flurys or a Kayani, who, by nostalgia, the product quality perception is very
correct,
but distribution is very low. So Aditi had an inclination towards food generally. Right? So she wasn't a trained baker before TV. Sharan will understand this. We actually got into all these partners without any listing fees. So today, modified atmosphere packaging, the banana bread, which was a 2-day shelf life product, first went to 25 days, and today it is at 3 months shelf life.
Oh, lovely.
So our head chef today in our factory, he was a security guard.
So, Sharan, I have a question to start with.
Sure.
Do you know how many pieces are there in a baker's dozen?
I do actually. And I know the story behind it.
You do?
Yeah, because there was some price control in the UK and for bread.
Mm-hmm.
Bakers who used to get beaten up pretty often, so they end up giving one extra, which became 12 plus 1, which became the wholesale scheme also, which is the 12 plus 1.
Correct. Trust a sales and marketing consultant to come up with a wholesale scheme reference somewhere during the podcast.
भैया 12 पे एक free है कहीं.
Exactly.
Excellent. Good. So, Sharan, the reason I brought up that reference is that today for all our listeners, for them to listen to and learn from some of the practical practitioners on the ground, we have on the podcast Sneh Jain with us. Hi, Sneh. How are you?
Hi, Sudeep. Hi, Sharan.
Welcome, sir.
And,
Good to be here.
Before we ask Sneh to introduce himself in detail, for our listeners, Sneh is a co-founder of the Baker's Dozen, and I don't think I need to introduce the brand. It is available all across all cities. I'm sure all of us have either seen it, consumed it, given some feedback, or recommended it. But they started this brand in 2013, been more than a decade. Extremely successful work, beautiful products, and possibly one of those brands where the product precedes marketing. Product is the marketing, and that is something that we will delve into as we go ahead. So over to you, Sneh. Why don't you just give a brief introduction to our listeners, and then we will deep dive.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sudeep. So as you said, right, so I'm one of the co-founders of the Baker's Dozen. Today, we would be India's largest artisanal bakery brand. And we'll delve into detail as to what do we mean by that also.
Yeah.
It's been a journey, been at it since almost 2013. So it's been 11 years since we've been running. It's Aditi and me, my co-founder, husband and wife. So spouses who decided to start a business together without thinking too much at that time. But, just to give you a background, so I'm the classic, middle class, high achiever at school story. Right. Did well in my studies always, and hence did engineering, immediately went to IIM Ahmedabad, passed out from there in 2009. Depth of recession at that time, Lehman and all had just tanked. But thankfully, I was already placed in McKinsey. So started off, it's a very classic journey till then, right? You do engineering, you do MBA, you become a consultant, and then you retire as a partner with a yacht. That was the idea. So for around 2.5 years was with McKinsey. Actually, one of the best jobs I think you can give to a young 20-year-old, right? 22-year-old. You get really exposed across scenarios. You get put into boardrooms. Like I remember in one of our projects, like I was told to present to the CEO of a $1 billion company as to, one of the departments, how they can change, right? And you're like literally 1 month into that project. So it puts a lot of pressure on you in a good way. So you ramp up very quickly. You learn to adapt. One of the beauties of consulting is you get to do across different departments, different industries. So I'm doing 3 months, I'm doing cement, then 3 months, I'm doing telecom, then I'm doing pharma. And I think what it really builds is your ability to learn fast. So you're supposed to talk intelligently about the industry to the industry expert in 2 weeks. So I think that's where that DNA got built. But I come from a Marwadi family. My parents are doctors actually, but nobody in my entire family, like extended family, is almost 100 odd folks. Nobody would have studied as much as I have. So after a point, it was very clear that I'm supposed to get back to at least starting a business. And it was also my, aim always, right? I wanted to build something. I think what excites me is building product and a brand. And we'll come to when we talk about TBD. For me, physical products, so I'm not a tech person. So for me, I don't understand building something which I can't see, touch or feel. So, McKinsey, obviously the biggest asset for McKinsey is people. So they do a lot of these learning and development programs. So I was at an associate level and I was going to become an engagement manager where you start managing a team and a project directly. And for that, they called us for a training session and we flew to Shanghai. And there was like this, 3-day 5-star hotel training session kind of thing. And in one of the sessions, they gave us a lot of Lego blocks, and they told us, imagine what you would be in 5 years, 10 years, and build that out of Lego. And a very, very creative exercise, actually. Everyone, like somebody built a corner office, somebody built a nice house with a family, etc. I built, when you do projects in school, when you have to build a factory, you would build a factory like this.
Yes.
And then there would be a chimney, and in that chimney, you would keep something which can then throw smoke.
Yes.
And then, so to show that your factory is working.
Yes.
So I actually built a factory using Lego, right, with the chimney and all. And so I'm a huge fan of cars. So I did put a Ferrari in front. That's by default kind of thing. But the thing was, it was a factory. So when this instructor came and asked me, so what is this? I said, in 5 years I'll have my own factory. But she said, like, how will you do this in McKinsey? Then I was like, valid question, right? and the training which was supposed to transition me from an associate to a manager actually led me to leave the and that's how kind of things evolve, right? So I realized that consulting is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So left in 2012, 3 years after joining, left without an idea in mind. The entire thesis, the idea at that time was, we'll figure it out, we'll explore. 6 months, 1 year at that age will not change your career trajectory too much. Right? So let's evolve. And let's
when you
see.
quit, you already decided you were going to do something with your wife?
No. So actually, I just quit, Sharan, saying that I want to do something on my own.
Nice.
Right? Now, what to do? So McKinsey was very worried. I remember in my exit interview, they were like, are you going to BCG? Are you going to Bain? You're not telling us where you're going. Like, this does not seem right. Like, people come with a plan saying, I'm going here, I'm moving here. I said, no, I just need time. I'll figure it out. And then, we started our exploration. Now what happened around the same time? So Aditi and me were married. We got married in 2010. And then, Aditi, so she comes from Ahmedabad. I'm from Bombay originally. And she was running a small project where she set up one of India's first college merchandise stores on IIM campus. All right. So this is not a classic, we always have these stores which sell like t-shirts and caps and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But IMA is unique in a way that the architecture itself is almost sellable, right? The entire architecture, it's very like, you can build models out of it. You can talk a lot about it. And if you see the kind of college souvenir shops that you get abroad in a Harvard or a MIT, the Indian shops are nowhere to that standard, right? We don't get those kind of paraphernalia. And that's what Aditi helped set up as a project more, because as I said, like she and her father were quite heavily involved with IIM. So it was more about a way of giving back to the institute. So we said we'll set up the shop and then hand it over to the institute to run. Simultaneously, so what happened around 2012, her project was coming to a close. It was transitioning to the institute. And we said that, we are both lying here thinking of what to do next. Let's do it together. At that time, there were no major frameworks drawn that is it a good thing or a bad thing for couples to work together. Right? Not too much thought at that time. But in hindsight, this entire, and when we delve a bit more into detail, the entire complementary skill set that Aditi and me bring, I think that kind of has really helped the brand. But going back to, so started off looking at things together. Now we said we actually sat in a room, we put a whiteboard and we said, what are industries that excite us and where we feel there is potential? So we kind of matched these two Venn diagrams in a very classic consulting way. So we said that, roti, kapda, makan, these are recession proof kind of, things like pharma, because we said, okay, I'm a pharmaceutical engineer, so pharma should be there on the board. At that time, this was 2012. Online grocery was actually there as a point on the board, and Big Basket had just not started. Actually, I think 2015 is when they also started. So put a lot of these on a board, and we said, okay, we don't have the expertise to decide right now. Like I don't have a strong inclination towards one or the other. Right. So let's go meet people who have done this.
Okay.
So we actually went on our own way of a Bharat Yatra, like a Shodh Yatra almost. Met 80 to 90 folks through our circles, right? Because you're part of the IM alumni network and things like that, right? So met entrepreneurs who are running call centers, who are running textile manufacturing companies. One guy, he was running the ambulance service for a state, right? Somebody who runs a restaurant. And we used to always go to these people and say that, literally we are here to listen to your story. We don't have an idea that we are bouncing off with you. We are just here to listen to your story. Like, for example, a lot of listeners today are doing to your podcast, right? So
yeah,
we'll just listen and then let's see where it goes. And we used to have those small recorders. We would record the conversation and then to go back, take notes, make like meeting notes out of it. And in one of the chance conversations, one guy just mentioned that there is no good bakery brand in India, right? And today also, honestly, if I were to really push you and ask, right, is there a pan-India bakery brand, that you can think of? Generally, the names that come to mind will be like a Britannia, for example.
Yeah.
Right. But also Britannia is over-indexed. It's actually cookies, right? It's Good Day. It's biscuit. Sorry, not even cookies. It's your Good Day of the world and all, right?
And
But
modern
if you
bread has changed hands more times than it's been bought.
Correct, right? And again, Sharan, these are also still, if you look at modern, if you look at Harvest Gold, right? These are still regional plays, right? A Harvest Gold is not there in Bangalore, right? Or a Chennai. So even today, if that name doesn't come to mind, and then what happens is you have a lot of these very local specialty bakeries.
Right.
Correct.
You'll have a Iyengar in Bangalore. You'll have a Flurries in Calcutta. You'll have a Kayani in Pune. You'll have a City Bakery in Bombay. But again, those have not gone pan-India or scale, right? So there is no brand presence. And if you go anywhere in the world, right, like especially if you go to Europe and the US and all, where bakery is much more evolved than where we are today, you'll have brands like there are bakeries sitting in Central Europe supplying on a daily basis to a France or a Germany or even to a UK. Right. So there are like continental brands. And here we are actually at a city level brand, not even at a state level brand. There's no very local regional taste in something like bread in India.
Yeah.
Right. See, if I talk about maybe, for example, you talk about dosa batter or you talk about idli or something, or you talk about rice, differently. So there is a basmati rice and there is a different rice. There's regional varieties, right? See, bread is essentially, it's not a, hereditary Indian product.
Correct.
Right? So it has come to us and hence it is the same across, right? Like it's almost like Maggie, right? Maggie, what you get in Kashmir when you're climbing Vaishno Devi, you'll get the same one that when you're going to Tirupati, right? So it's not that it has to have regional flavor. Now you can do add-ons. But the fundamental bread or the fundamental sponge cake or the fundamental biscuit remains the same across. So there's no market need to restrict it locally.
Yeah.
It's just how it has evolved over time. Right? And that was one of the big things that we wanted to challenge. We said, the genesis of Baker's Dozen was that can you take a high quality, true to its origin bakery product and make it available pan-India. So we always, in most of our, decks or whenever, we always talk about like a 2x2 axis, right? You take distribution on one side and you take either product quality or perceived product quality because I'm not going to comment on others, right? So if you look at distribution and product quality, perceived product quality on this, you'll have your, let's say, a local like a Flurys or a Kayani, who, by nostalgia, the product quality perception is very high,
Correct.
but distribution is very low, right? And then you have those mass brands where there is no differentiation on quality at all. Like,
Correct.
tell me, would you ever go and say that I will only eat Britannia bread if it's not there, and if Harvest Gold is in front of me, I will not pick it up?
Never,
Not
right?
at all. Of course not. Yeah.
Right. So that never happens. So there's no differentiation on the product quality. It's almost all our hygiene, right? Fun basic bread hai, अच्छा है, चलेगा मेरे लिए. But the distribution is very high over there.
Correct.
Now, can I be over-indexed on quality? And at least, over a lifetime, I'm not saying it will happen immediately, at least over a lifetime, kind of start matching the distribution of the mass guys, right? And we didn't feel there was any market restriction on that or any structural restriction on that in that industry. There is a shelf life part to it. There's a shelf life part to it, which we will come to. But when you're, and especially as a naive 22-year-old, you're like, ye kyun nahi ho sakta? So that's how essentially, the Baker's Dozen was born. It also matched two more things. One, so Aditi had an inclination towards food generally, right? So she wasn't a trained baker before TBD, just to clarify.
Oh, okay. I thought she was always a chef. Oh, okay.
No. So she had an inclination. She actually has a psychology degree and an HR degree. So she, too much psychological analysis happens on me also. But yeah, so she comes from that background, right? And food, however, always kind of, there was a calling towards it, right? So we were in Canada at one time. I was on a 9-month-long McKinsey project. So she came along with me, and while she was managing remotely the project at IIM campus. And over there, she just started going and helping a falafel guy in a mall, right? And say obviously, officially, you can't be employed. You're on a tourist visa, etc., right? So she said, I don't want to be paid. I just come. I'll, help you out for 4-5 hours. You just teach me, it will just help me understand, the cuisine, etc. And that was kind of the initial start where, she almost started connecting to ingredients, to why a certain thing is made a certain way.
Yeah.
Right? Why, a certain food item will take a 1-day process to get made right? So you can't speed up something which is meant to go, that way. And that's actually when I come to the difference between artisanal and mass, right? A lot of people perceive artisanal as premium, and that's the major issue that I have with that. But just to flip back, so she started developing an interest to food, right? And for me, as I said, right, I needed a product. I needed it on a shelf. And for me, brand creation which was very interesting, right? I know that excitement that you get when you go to a store and you see your product on a shelf and you can, ye mera wala hai. Right? I think that was what kind of really excited me. So we decided to start the Baker's Dozen. The name was given by me. I was reading a book, and the story that Sharan said. And I said, it kind of ticks all the boxes. Why? Because see, it almost signifies that you're giving more to the customer.
Correct.
Right? We kind of extended saying it's more not only by quantity, but also by quality, or by the process or the steps that we take to make it. And that's when, so we were still in Bombay. At this time, we were settled in Bombay. Now we are in Ahmedabad, and that story is more of an evolution of the business. But we were in Bombay, decided to start TBD. We then felt that one of us should have the technical expertise.
Okay.
Because you see, you can rely on team and you can rely on chefs. However, let's say in 2 years they leave you and go. What do you do? Right? And how do you question what is being done? They'll come and tell you that ye 4 ingredient to chahiye, iske bin. Right? Yeah. And you have no locus standi to say that no. I believe it can be done differently. So that's when Aditi, I think it was very obvious that who will go and learn how to become a chef. Like I'm quite bad in the kitchen, right? But the best thing I'm doing for the kids right now is taking our pancake premix and making pancakes out of it, and it's idiot proof. It's father approved. So Aditi first went to the French Culinary Institute in New York. Now, why America and why not Europe? See, Europe is classic bakery, right? It is like the home of bakery of France or even for that matter, Netherlands, Germany, etc. But the Americans have this unique way of taking everything and making it so, process oriented, like you can actually scale it up.
Yeah.
Right. So sliced bread was invented by them for this reason.
Correct.
Right. In Europe, please go and try in France finding sliced bread.
You'll find loaves only.
Yeah. And if you are ever seen with a sliced bread, it's almost like blasphemy, right? It's like, this does not work. But so that's when, so she went first there to the French Culinary Institute in New York. This was a pure bread baking course, right? And did a lot of trials with a chef. She went very clearly saying, see, I'm not coming here. I'm coming here to learn and for the love of the bread. But for me also, I want to learn practices which I can adapt to scale. So, help me with products which I know, which I can take beyond rather than, make it live and give it to a customer, right? So we are not here for that entire mom and pop quintessential live bakery experience.
Yeah.
That's not what the aim is. So she did that. She came back. In the meanwhile, I set up our facility in Bombay. It was initially a small 1,000 square feet kind of kitchen in an industrial area in central Bombay. And we put up our first, retail store. And this, I think, even till today was one of India's first dedicated high street stores selling bread. So our store, if you're familiar with Bombay, obviously, Prabhadevi, right?
Yeah.
So the road from Siddhivinayak, which goes and where you have your buildings like Beaumont and all, right?
Yes.
Where people, the net worth of that building is itself a city, right? And we have a store right opposite it, right? And which is only selling bread. Like people would come inside saying, acha jewelry store, ye kitna acha bread hai. Only 200 rupees, man. A lot of learnings, and I think what helped was we were doing something new, even for the city of Bombay. This was around the time when Starbucks had started coming. Right? So what we realized is initially we started with 13 types of bread. That was our first menu, right?
Wow.
Because Baker's dozen 13. Right. And now to just double click on the artisanal part, right? This is where we said we will be true and authentic to the product. So what I mean by that is, when we first started, we had this European chef who was visiting, I think, a few other bakeries or these, institutions like an F&B, like a food hall and a big bazaar and all, who came to somebody said, these two people, they're doing something unique. Go and meet them, right? So he came to our facility. This was the third day of his visit. He came, he tried our different breads. So he tried a focaccia, he tried a 4-grain sourdough, and he tried a multigrain bread and a ragi bread. And he turned around and he told Aditi and me that, see, I've been 3 days in Bombay. Okay. I've eaten bread from various places, including a lot of the 5-star hotels, etc., etc. One line always kept coming to me. It was all same shit, different shapes, right?
Okay.
It's like a focaccia tastes the same as a burger bun, tastes the same as a multigrain, tastes the same. It's all just, if you make it straight, it becomes a focaccia. If you make it round, it becomes a burger bun. If you cut it as a sliced bread, it becomes a sliced bread. All right. First time I'm able to actually feel a difference.
Oh, nice.
And that's when we told him that these are all, individual scratch recipes. I believe, that's what artisanal is. It is not premium. It does not only mean high priced. A lot of people, perceive कि artisanal होगा तो मतलब mass से तो, 2x, 3x होगा ही.
Correct.
It's not necessary. It is all about, are you being true to the product, true to the steps of the product? For example, if a croissant takes 1.5 days for the lamination and for the layers in a croissant to come, where when you cut a croissant, you should be able to see that mesh
Layers,
right? Then it takes that much time. Now that's being artisanal. Now, if you say that I'm going to make this in 3 hours, right, and call this a croissant, that's not being true to the product, right? Now, what happens in many cases is the process and the ingredients that you need to be true to the product inadvertently leads to the pricing being high.
Does it also mean it must be handmade?
So yes and no, in a way that, see, okay, I'll give you an example, right? Now, a loaf, like a sourdough loaves, right? Each of a loaf are handmade, right? So those loaves, right? They need a certain way of shaping it. You will not get two identical sourdough loaves, right? It's because it all depends on how it interacts with itself in an oven, right? When I'm putting it into the oven, they are all fine. After that, one might grow more, one might grow less. That happens, right? But let's take sliced bread, for example. Right now, sliced breads, they bake in molds. Right? That's how they get their perfect square shape.
Square shapes, yes.
Now, that part is obviously not handmade, right? That is part of going into an oven and part of more of an industrialized setup. That can almost be automated to the extent where you put it on a conveyor belt, it goes into an oven and it comes out.
Right.
But does that mean you can't be artisanal in sliced bread? I don't think so. You can still be. So our multigrain, for example, has almost 30% seeds in it. Right?
Okay.
Now, right, our ragi loaf has ragi flour, not like a, like a kesar milk kind of example, right? Where kesar is like this.
Sprinkled.
So does that mean I cannot make artisanal sliced bread? No. I think where I feel is that if you take the true essence of the word, it is more about just being true to the product. Am I doing right by it? Now, yes, from a sales and marketing angle, you can talk about, okay, my artisanal breads are sourdoughs and my daily breads are sliced breads. But that's more, Sharan, from a front end to the customer. But as a business or as a back end, you would follow the same principles across.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That's quite fair. And therefore, Sneh, when you were explaining this to people around you, to investors, etc., you'd had to, I can only imagine, you'd had to explain the word artisanal over and over again.
Yeah. So we used to get, aapke bread bahut artistic hai na? That was like the most common thing.
Poor chaps. I don't blame them, Sneh. The word artisanal is not very common in the lingo that we use.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, and
it either signifies two things for most people, right? So either it's like it's been made by the hands of an artist and, very this, right? Or it's been made in a very, for the lack of better context, it's like, been made in a very NGO kind of setup, like, hum to seva kar rahe hai kahin.
Correct.
Right? And I'm like, ye dono nahi hai. It's a bus product sahi. But it was difficult. But where I'll tell you, where Bombay worked beautifully for the launch of the brand was, now again, going back to that 2013-14, right? So a lot of people had started getting exposed to global tastes. When Starbucks came to India, people didn't think, ye kaun hai. People kind of, a lot of people understood the concept. A lot of people related. They would have studied abroad, gone to a Starbucks, seen that experience, right? And that's what we started getting. So, when we started with our breads, like there were like sourdough breads, which India had never heard of, right? And we started getting feedback like, hey, when I was in Germany on my exchange or as a student, I had this bread. This reminds me of that experience, right? The croissants taste the same as on my visit to Paris. Yeah. And we felt there was a natural pull to the brand. And, you mentioned right at the start, Sudeep, that the product is the marketing, right? And that started working. So word of mouth spread beautifully. We started getting covered by a lot of newspapers. We have actually never paid for any coverage, right? So like we started coming on a page 3 in Bombay Times saying where to eat next, what to buy, right? We started getting like we opened a store in Bandra, we opened a store in Lokhandwala. So we started getting celebs coming in, picking up products. And it almost became like, okay, these guys are doing something new. It's unique, it's novel. And, that's how the word of mouth spread. And that's where I really credit Bombay because that kind of awareness and that willingness to try something new, that wouldn't have happened if we would have started, let's say, in an Ahmedabad at that.
Nice. No, I believe so. I think Bombay gave you the right fertile ground to pay you results early on. That encouraged you for sure. Excellent. And Sneh, tell us, now that you chose your space, you started playing in it.
Yeah.
Now, this is a place which, while it requires patience and it requires mastery over subject, but it is not that you are uniquely placed. You are the only one who can do this. Yeah. There must have been other chefs, 5-star chefs, etc. would have said कि यार ये तो मैं भी कर सकता हूँ. but somehow never got to doing it, right? So what do you think the barrier was, the differentiator was that allowed Sneh to take it to this level?
So I think the main differentiator would be the combination of Aditi and me, right? And in hindsight, see what happens if you have a strong product person with a not strong sales part,
Yeah.
right? Then the product story becomes great, but it gets limited. For example, I just asked Aditi one day, why can't we do Pune? What's stopping us? If we are in Bombay, why can't we do Pune? So we said, okay, let's start Pune. Like literally Bombay to Pune now is, it's almost like a sister city, right? So,
Correct.
and we got a great response. Even today, by the way, like at a per store sales level, there are many stores in Pune which do better than even Bombay stores.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Right? Because see, when you go to these cities, it's not that people don't have the money to spend. They don't have options.
Correct.
Right. And also, obviously, there's a strong bakery culture, etc. in Pune, historically. Right. So the questions like that, see, when you start pushing, when the other person starts pushing that, okay, there's another example, right? So we were around 4-5 years in Bombay, Pune, right? Just to an evolution of the brand. So we started with our own stores. So when we moved, we very quickly realized that this is an availability led business. Okay. We used to get customers, let's say from Powai walking into our Prabhadevi store saying, I came and so the answer used to always be, I was coming and meeting my friends. I've heard a lot about you guys. So I dropped in and picked up, right? Now, then the next question would be, how do I get this daily in my house? I stay in Hiranandani, right? I'm not crazy enough to come to Prabhadevi for this.
Correct.
Right? So what do I do? That's when we started tapping into partnerships with your trade partners, like with a Heiko or with a Big Bazaar, with a food hall, with a Nature's Basket, right? Sharan will understand this. We actually got into all these partners without any listing fees.
Okay. Lovely.
At all, right? And that, because, see, they also wanted the product. It was a unique product range, which, customers are asking for, right? And they don't have the ability to do it, right? Like who had heard of bagels being sold in a supermarket store?
Yeah.
All right. And bagels made, not the dough just being made into a round circle, but being poached and having that texture that a bagel requires, right? So when we started expanding like that, now we then expanded across Bombay, all right? And when e-commerce started, Big Basket was the first one who started. And we were one of the first brands in Bombay to get onboarded on that, right? Again, because we became like a crowd puller for these guys also.
There was significant overlap of the customers they were going after and the ones you were serving on already.
Correct. And getting a lot of, new customers for them also. That same story is repeating in a big way on quick commerce today. Like a next way of that happened, right? And so Bombay, Pune got covered. Then my natural question was, I to always think, yaar, isko bada kaise karo? In the end, the idea, see, either you should be very clear that you're running a one-stop bakery shop, make it great, make it profitable, run it well, and live that life, right? Or you go and build a brand. You can't be midway. And for me, it was very risky. You start thinking of like consulting terms, like, my opportunity cost. If I would have been here, then what would have happened? It's ABC, right? So I'm like, isko to bada karna hi padega na. There's no second option, right? So I asked Aditi, like, why can't we do Bangalore? So she said, like, let's try. We used to actually, Sudeep, Sharan, we used to actually airlift our bread from Bombay to Bangalore. It would land at Bangalore airport, go to the cargo terminal. Within 1 hour, we would release it. It would go to a Nature's Basket store in Bangalore and get sold.
How did your Marwadi McKinsey brain allow this?
So sometimes, for a few years in between, Sharan, it went into coma. I almost feel like, in hindsight, some of those mistakes also kind of, you just realize, okay, there is a potential market. We were serving it incorrectly. I absolutely, agree to it. The cost loaded on that poor slice of bread, like, it almost like bent under that support, right? That weight. But the response was great. Like we started getting talked about in Bangalore, retailers started approaching us, why are you not coming as ABC, right? And that's when I felt, okay, this can be scaled up. It is not a very Bandra Pali Naka concept.
Yeah.
Right. It can be a Hebbal concept also. It can be anywhere, right? It need not. And that's when, again, Sudeep, coming back to that point, right? So my question always was, why can't we do this? Right. And that's when we went to Europe again to learn that how have those guys done it? Like today, when I was telling you that a Central European bakery will supply bread daily to a Paris or to a London, right? They are not supplying mass quality, non-differentiated bread.
Sure.
So how are they doing it, which we are not able to do it? Right. So we actually went back, spoke to a lot of manufacturers. So Aditi and me have this unique thing. Like I said, I'll go to a manufacturer in Europe and say that, I want to be a distributor in India. It's a market ripe for disruption. I will take your products. You give it to me frozen. I will spread it across India. But I want to check your quality standards. So I want to visit your factory. So ऐसे करके, I would have at least visited some 10-15 factories across Europe.
Nice.
And when you start seeing what they're doing from a technique perspective, right? And that's when we came upon this technology of modified atmosphere packaging. So today we use it for our cakes mainly, not for breads. Breads has undergone a change again. But that was like almost like eye-opening for us, right? Because what was the other answer? The other answer was you go down a way like what, let's say, a Britannia or anybody does. So you put factories everywhere, right? You put preservatives or chemicals in your bread, you make it last longer, and you distribute it.
Correct.
What is your differentiation? Distribution.
Correct. Distribution and maybe the branding.
Maybe the branding. Correct.
Yeah.
So that's it. Can we do it that way? We actually felt a strong sense of control that we wanted manufacturing under our control.
Okay.
Now, setting up 10 factories across India was an option. There are examples of that we felt was something which, we didn't want to get into. And that's when we came upon modified atmosphere packaging. So it took us a year to do trials with a German company. We went there, did trials. We actually carried flour from India there, saying we want to do it on our flour because your flour is very different. What you can get as a gluten percentage, we cannot in our flour, right? So we did all of those trials and then eventually succeeded in doing it and extending our shelf life. So we were the first bakery. We are actually still now, I think, the only bakery in India who does it. Modified atmosphere packaging is not a novel concept to Indian manufacturing. So your paneer, your, a lot of dates, when you have those like dried dates kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Cheese slices, when you have those slice packs, right? All of that is actually modified atmosphere packaging. Now, how is it different from so when you see a pack of Lays, right? That's essentially gas flushed pack. So you have kind of removed the oxygen from inside or like at least flushed it out with gases. But the pack is not going to restrict air coming in and out. There will still be some movement, right? It's like a breathable pack to the core, to the micro kind of core of it, right? When we pack our products, and today, if you were to take any of our sponge cakes, like Sharan, you were mentioning the banana bread, for example, right? When you get it in a plastic, in a box, and then when you remove it, there is a plastic pack.
Plastic around it.
Right? That plastic is a multi-layered barrier plastic. So what happens in our machine? So it's like an automated machine. So the plastic pack gets formed in the machine from a film. Then you keep the product. Then two steps happen simultaneously. So there is a vacuuming in that area around. So you're removing all the air, all the atmosphere from it. And then you're flushing it with inert gases. And then you're sealing it in the same instant. Now what you have done is now this seal, because it is a barrier seal, it is preventing external oxygen from going in.
Okay.
Right? See, the cause for food spoilage, a lot of it is aerobic microorganisms in taking the oxygen and growing. Now what I've done is in the pack, I have a less than 1% oxygen left. I've completely changed the atmosphere inside the pack. I have put a barrier to prevent the external atmosphere from coming in.
Correct.
Right? Technically, or more from a theoretically, if the barrier was 100%, product should never go bad, or at least, like stay for a long way. But
Correct.
obviously, nothing will give you 100% barrier. But what you have done is, if it was breathing to, let's say, 10x, you have made it X. Right? So your spoilage, which would have started on day 3 or day 4, now starts on day 8 or day 10.
Nice.
But all of this is because we didn't want to add preservatives.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't want to add chemicals. So what happens, it's not only preservatives. See, people don't understand, like banana bread, for example, right? We used to always be told by food consultants that, if you are putting bananas, because it's a real fruit, right? It will spoil.
Right.
Okay.
So your cake will spoil. So you should replace it with a banana essence, banana flavor, right? Why? See, there is, like honestly, the mass manufacturers are not wrong when they say that, we are using like this identical flavor, right? Because the real one gets spoiled because that's a natural product, right? So we were always told कि आप banana हटाओ, आप flavor डालो, आप essence डालो. Problem is, any flavor or essence will always obviously not taste the same as the real product.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And you will always have that chemical aftertaste in your mouth. Right? Many times in our banana bread, people come and tell us that, we can see some form of like lines, like, when you cut, sometimes, there is that kind of structurally, there are some kind of fibers getting formed, etc. And we actually, and they ask us, is it bad or something? And they say, no, this is actually the real banana now interacting. So this is almost like proof
that there is real banana inside.
Real bananas in this, right? But we wanted to solve shelf life. Obviously, but I wanted to scale. We wanted to solve shelf life. So that's when, so today, modified atmosphere packaging, just to give you an impact, the banana bread, which was a 2-day shelf life product when we were in Bombay, Pune, first went to 25 days. And today it is at 3 months shelf life.
Oh, lovely. Wow, that's a brilliant jump.
But no additives, no change in recipe, no modifications done to it, just by the packaging and the actually, almost it's like asking the question, why can't we do it?
I now get, Sneh, why you said that the combination of Aditi and you makes this, because Aditi comes from the artisanal authenticity kind of a background, and you come from saying, why can't I preserve that yet scale it? I think that combination seems to have taken simple dozen to a baker's dozen. Added that one extra.
Fantastic. I completely agree. When we used to hire people right at the start, so on that point, right? So we have a hiring philosophy. So initially, we used to hire people from when we started. People said, "Aap, IHM se hire karo. You have these catering institutes. वहाँ से hire करो, Taj से hire करो, etc. etc." We hired a few people. We said, अब चलो बनाओ bread, cake, जो भी. They will be like कि हमें, ये chemical चाहिए, ये premix चाहिए, ये चाहिए, A, B, C, D. Right? तो I said, मतलब वो तो फिर, मतलब my son can also make it. Like, mix ही तो करना है. Like, so, what is that? And what we realized was the problem is training happens like this.
Correct. Or maybe the right ones find a different way. They go somewhere else. But I don't.
Them are trained in the industrial kitchen, and therefore you push through.
Yeah.
And it's an accepted practice. Like he's saying, nobody challenged it. In fact, I didn't think about it that way before Sneh started explaining that why can't be there another way rather than a something that contains a lot of preservatives or therefore is made to last that way. I never questioned it.
Right. So in our venture to scale, right, we've all worked in the food business. The easiest option is to adjust the product to last, then think of solving for other solutions to get the product to extend shelf life. And the fact that you've said, I am going to maintain my product sacrosanct and I'm going to do everything around it to extend shelf life, is the slightly longer game, the harder challenge, and that's exactly why the differences happened at Baker's Dozen.
Very interesting.
And a lot of difficult questions have to be asked, right? So like, and I think people just kind of stay away from that asking. And today, and some of the things you change internally, Sharan. So today, for example, our hiring philosophy is very simple. We don't hire anybody because they are qualified or they come from a certain level. So our head chef today in our factory, who knows as much about bread and cake and literally can touch a dough and tell you whether it's ready for baking or not, right? To that extent. Just to point this out, right? He used to earlier, before he joined TBD, he was a security guard. The vision was quite clear. It was to provide a no nasties, real ingredients bakery product at scale. A modified atmosphere pack will cost 2 to 3x of what a normal pack will cost you. My differentiator cannot be distribution. We were bootstrapped for almost 8 years. 6 of it was out of choice. 2 of it was because we could not answer this question. So don't try to teach consumers. You don't have the bandwidth for that. I don't believe D2C works in food or in FMCG. When you're trying to raise funds, you call yourself a D2C startup. You cannot serve people from your website or from Amazon or somewhere directly as a brand. Now the problem is the customer has moved to the online ordering platforms. So what is the point of this store? So where we are okay with discounting is for a new customer or a new trial or somebody new to the brand. Also go through your pricing structure and see that are you actually incorrect?
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.